When did my parents' golden child finally crash and lose everything? I used to think the answer would be some huge, dramatic moment. An arrest. A scandal. A car crash. I never imagined it would start with my mother sitting on my couch, clutching her phone like a grenade, whispering, "He's lost everything. Your brother has nothing left." My brother. Their golden child. The son who could never do wrong. Now she was in my tiny apartment instead of the big house they'd always chosen him in. And her hands were shaking so badly, she could barely hold the glass of water I gave her. Just a few hours earlier, I was at work when my phone started blowing up. Missed call from mom. Missed call from dad. 3 from my little sister. By the time I finally stepped outside to answer, my mother's voice came through so hysterical I thought someone had died. "Please," she said. "Can I come over? I need to talk to you about your brother." That sentence alone told me this wasn't normal. My mom never came to me about my brother. She went to everyone else to defend him. So I told her yes. Now she was staring at my living room floor like the answers were written in the carpet. "What happened?" I asked. She took a breath like it physically hurt. "He got evicted," she said. "They put all his things on the sidewalk. His car's been repossessed. His cards aren't working. He doesn't have anywhere to go. I should have just felt sorry for him. He's still my brother." But under the shock, there was this cold, ugly feeling I couldn't ignore. Of course. Of course this is where we ended up. "What do you mean he has nowhere to go?" I asked. "He can't go back to his place, sure. But he can stay at home, right? With you and dad?" She didn't answer. She just stared at me with these wide red eyes. "Mom?" She swallowed. "Your father said no." I actually laughed. Because that sentence didn't make sense. "No. For tonight?" I asked. "Or no until you both calm down?" She shook her head slowly. "Your father said," she whispered. "He can figure it out like everyone else. I'm done cleaning up his messes." For a second, I thought I misheard. My dad. The same man who used to drive across town to bring my brother his forgotten homework? The man who defended him to teachers, bosses, girlfriends, the universe, was suddenly talking about him like he was me, like a normal person. "What happened?" I asked again. "From the beginning." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "You remember that business he told us about?" She said. "That business. The one he'd pitched in our living room like he was on a TED Talk. The one they drained savings for. The one they'd lectured me about when I said it sounded risky." "Yeah." I remembered. "He said he just needed a little more money to get it off the ground," she continued. "He said he had investors. That a big deal was about to close. He promised if we helped this one last time, he'd pay everything back and we'd never have to worry again." "One last time," I repeated quietly. "You've said one last time so often it might as well be his middle name." She flinched. "I know," she said. "I know." She stared at the coffee table. Like the numbers and dates were printed there. "Your father refinanced the house," she added, barely audible. Just enough to give him what he needed. I felt my stomach drop. They'd literally tied our childhood home to my brother's promises. "How much?" I asked. She told me. I had to sit down. "That's almost everything," I said. "I know," she whispered. "And he didn't pay anything he was supposed to. Not the loans. Not his rent. Nothing." She told me how the business never opened the way he said it would. How emails from the bank piled up. How letters came. Final notice. Pay, or else. "And you didn't tell me any of this," I said. "You have your own life," she replied quickly. "We didn't want to worry you. Your father said we could fix it ourselves." Those words again. We can fix it. They'd been trying to fix him since he was born. "So the eviction, the car being taken, that all just happened today?" I asked. "Not today," she said slowly. "Over the last month. He just kept saying it was under control. Today was the first time he admitted it wasn't." She swallowed. "He came to the house," she said. "With his bags. He said he had nowhere else to go. That we owed him that much after everything we put him through." I could picture it perfectly. My brother on the porch. My mom already softening. My dad standing behind her with that tight jaw. "What did dad say?" I asked. Her voice shook. "He told him, 'You can come in for dinner. But you can't live here,'" she said. "He said if he moved back it would be with rules. Paying rent. Getting a job. No more handouts." I waited for the part where my brother accepted that like an adult. "Of course, he didn't. He exploded," she said, tears sliding down again. "He said we were choosing you over him. He said we'd ruined his life by spoiling him. And now we were abandoning him. He said, we never loved him. Not really. That we always wanted you instead." That one stung. Even though I knew it wasn't true. I'd spent my entire childhood being compared to him. And now in his head, I was the favorite. "What did dad do?" I asked. She stared at her hands. "He told him," she whispered. "We're not your safety net anymore. You're 30 years old. It's time you hit the ground and learned how to stand on your own." Silence. "He walked away," she added. "He told us we'd regret it. He slammed the door and left." She took a shaky breath. "A few hours later he called me," she said. "He was on the sidewalk. All his things in trash bags. He said, 'Mom, you have to fix this. You always fix it.'" Her voice cracked. "And for the first time," she said. I didn't know how. The room went quiet. My chest hurt for her. For him. For the mess all of them had built together. But there was another truth buzzing under my skin. One I knew she didn't want to hear. "This didn't start today," I said softly. He didn't just suddenly lose everything. She looked up at me, confused and desperate. Then when did it start? She asked. When did we lose him? I thought about every time they'd called him special, while telling me I was strong enough to handle less. Every time he broke something and they blamed stress, while I breathed too loud and got accused of having an attitude. You started losing him, I said. The first time you taught him that no matter what he did, you would clean it up. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Somewhere out there, their golden child was sitting on a sidewalk, surrounded by bags of his whole life, waiting for a rescue that wasn't coming. And in that moment, I realized I had my own question to answer. When did my parents' golden child finally crash and lose everything? And how long had we all been watching the slow-motion accident and pretending it wasn't happening? To understand how my brother ended up on that sidewalk, we have to go back to the beginning. Back to when he wasn't just my brother, but the family's shining star. He was the firstborn, the first grandchild, the first everything. And from day one, he was treated like a miracle. I remember looking at old photo albums, page after page of him. His first step, his first tooth, his first time on a swing. Then, a few pages later, there I was, a tiny baby, usually in the background of one of his pictures. Like an afterthought. It wasn't malicious, not at first. It was just how it was. If he drew a stick figure, my parents would frame it. Look at our little artist. They'd coo. If I drew something that actually looked like a house, they'd say, oh, that's nice. But look what he did, and point to his scribbled masterpiece. Every achievement of his was a family event. His first soccer goal, even if it was an own goal, resulted in a celebratory ice cream trip. When I brought home an A on a test, the question was always, why didn't you get an A+? Or, did your brother help you study? He was the genius, the charmer, the one who's going to put this family on the map. Me? I was the responsible one. The easy child. The one they didn't have to worry about. Which, looking back, meant I was the one they didn't worry about. This meant I was his built-in babysitter, his homework helper, his emotional punching bag when he was in a mood. And if I ever complained, he's your brother. You need to be more understanding. I learned early on that my role was to support his brilliance, to make his life easier, to be the quiet, compliant background character in his epic story. And he learned, just as quickly, that rules were flexible. I remember one time, he broke my favorite toy, a delicate porcelain doll I'd saved up for. He threw it against the wall during a tantrum. I was devastated, crying, holding the broken pieces. My mom came in, saw the mess, and immediately went to him. What's wrong, sweetie? Why are you so upset? He pointed at me. She wouldn't share, he yelled. My mom turned to me. You know how he gets when he's stressed, she said. You should have just let him play with it. She didn't even ask if I was okay. She just handed him a cookie and told me to clean up the mess. And then, she bought him a new toy the next day. My doll was never replaced. That was a pattern. If he lied about eating cookies before dinner, my dad would chuckle. He's just a growing boy. Got a sweet tooth. Just like me. If I even thought about sneaking a cookie, it was a lecture about honesty, trust, and how I was setting a bad example. He learned that his mistakes were charming. Mine were character flaws. He learned that if he cried loud enough, or got angry enough, the rules would bend. The consequences would disappear, and someone else would always be blamed. I learned that if I wanted peace, I had to be perfect. And even then, it wasn't enough. I remember one Christmas, he wanted a specific, expensive video game console. My parents said it was too much. He threw a fit, screamed, locked himself in his room. My mom spent hours trying to coax him out. My dad paced, muttering about how sensitive he was. By Christmas morning, guess what was under the tree? The video game console. My gift? A book. A good book, sure, but it wasn't the same. My parents explained. He just needs things more. He feels things deeper. I just nodded. I was the easy child. I didn't need things. I didn't feel things as deeply. Or at least, that's what I was taught. This wasn't just about toys or grades. It was about a fundamental difference in how we were seen. He was the delicate, brilliant flower that needed constant nurturing and protection. I was the sturdy weed that could thrive anywhere, and probably needed to be trimmed back occasionally. He was allowed to be messy, emotional, demanding. I was expected to be calm, rational, and undemanding. And the more they protected him from the consequences of his actions, the more entitled he became. The more he believed that the world, and especially our parents, would always bend to his will. He was building a life on a foundation of endless second chances. And I was building a life on a foundation of, well, just trying not to make waves. Back then, his worst consequence was a disappointed look. But as we got older, those double standards stopped being cute, and started getting dangerous. It definitely wasn't in childhood. Back then, his disasters were small enough to call phases. The real problem started when those phases grew up with him. By the time my brother hit his teenage years, everyone at school already knew who he was. Teachers loved him. At least, the first few weeks of every semester. He'd charm them with that fake attentive face, crack a joke at just the right time, answer one question perfectly, and boom. He was the smart kid who just needs to apply himself. Sound familiar? At home, my parents repeated it like a prayer. He's brilliant, he's just lazy. He's gifted, he's just bored. He's responsible deep down, he just gets distracted. It's amazing how many excuses you can invent when you're terrified to admit your favorite child is actually human. Meanwhile, I wasn't brilliant or gifted or special. I was just the one who actually did my homework. But if I asked for help, you're fine. You always figure it out. Translation. We're busy chasing your brother's potential. The first big sign that things were getting serious was the cheating. He got caught copying answers on a math test. The teacher moved his seat and gave him a 0. When I heard, I thought, okay, finally. He's going to face real consequences for something. I was wrong. My parents stormed into that school like it was a courtroom and they were his lawyers. My dad accused the teacher of targeting my brother. My mom said he only cheated because he was under too much pressure to be perfect. Somehow, by the time they left, the narrative had flipped. My brother wasn't a cheater. He was a victim of high expectations and an unfair test. He still got a 0 on the assignment, but at home that turned into a badge of honor. We know who you really are, my mom said, hugging him. You're not a bad kid. They didn't realize that was exactly the problem. Bad decisions with no bad consequences. And he was paying attention. The cheating turned into skipping class. Skipping class turned into lying about where he was. Lying turned into coming home smelling like smoke and alcohol. Every time, there was a reason. The other kids pressured him. He's just experimenting. We all did dumb things as teenagers. When I came home 5 minutes late, grounded. When he rolled in 2 hours late with red eyes, my parents whispered in the kitchen about how they needed to talk to him gently so he wouldn't shut down. One night stands out in my memory like a scar. He'd borrowed the car just to go to a friend's house. He was supposed to be back by 10. At midnight, we heard a knock on the door. It was the police. They'd found the car in a ditch. Front bumper smashed. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. My brother was sitting on the porch steps, head down, a perfect picture of regret. Or at least, that's what my parents saw. I saw the same performance he'd used since he learned how to cry on command. The officer explained what happened. My brother had been speeding. He'd taken a turn too fast. He didn't have alcohol in his system, but he could have easily hurt someone. The ticket was expensive. Insurance would go up. He'd lose his license for a while. The officer said all of this calmly, like he'd said it 100 times. My parents nodded, faces pale, holding on to each other. After the officer left, my dad turned to my brother. Are you okay? He asked. Not, what were you thinking? Not, you could have died. Just, are you okay? My brother sniffed dramatically. I'm sorry, he mumbled. I messed up. I know I disappointed you. That's all it took. My mom wrapped him in a hug. It was just an accident, she said. Cars can be replaced. You can't. They spent the rest of the night comforting him, making hot chocolate, telling him stories about their reckless teenage years. I watched from the hallway, unseen as usual, and realized something terrifying. In our house, my brother's worst mistakes brought him closer to our parents. Mine just proved I didn't deserve their trust. The car accident should have been a turning point. It wasn't. If anything, it taught him that even really dangerous things could be smoothed over with a sad face and a shaky apology. The stakes kept getting higher. He started dating a girl from school. She was kind, quiet, and completely in love with him. He cheated on her. Twice. Both times she found out. Both times she cried in our driveway. My parents' response? She's too emotional for you anyway. You're young. You should have fun. No one ever looked at him and said, you're hurting people. But they looked at me and said that a lot. If I confronted him, I was starting drama. If I refused to cover for him, I was untrustworthy. If I told him the truth that he was selfish and cruel, I was jealous of his life. He didn't realize it. But high school was the rehearsal for his entire adult personality. Do whatever feels good. Someone else will clean it up. Someone else will blame the world for you. Meanwhile, I was quietly becoming the opposite. I got a job at 16. Because nobody was going to buy me a car. I did my own homework, tutored my classmates, and still came home in time for curfew. If I forgot to text my mom once, she'd say, I can't believe you'd be so irresponsible. If my brother disappeared for hours and refused to answer his phone, they'd say, he must be going through something. We need to be patient with him. Watching them pour all their worry, time, and money into him, while treating my stability like a given, did something permanent to me. I stopped asking for help. I stopped sharing my feelings. I stopped expecting fairness. But the truth? Teenage years didn't destroy my brother. They just sharpened the knife he'd eventually use against himself. Because every time life tried to teach him a lesson, with a bad grade, a broken relationship, a crashed car, my parents stepped between him and the consequences. And every time they did that, they took away one more chance for him to grow up. We didn't know it then. But we were already watching the beginning of his crash. Not the final explosion. Just the little cracks in the surface that everyone kept pretending would fix themselves. If childhood was about making him feel special, his teenage years were about teaching him one deadly lie. You will always be rescued. And once you believe that, you start driving through life like nothing can touch you. Literally and figuratively. High school ended, but the golden treatment didn't. It just got more expensive. My brother went off to college on a scholarship. My parents bragged about it for months. Every family gathering, every phone call, it was, our son, the scholar. He's going to do great things. What they didn't mention was how he skipped classes, blew through his scholarship money on partying, and called home whenever reality hit him too hard. Mom would wire him cash. Dad would blame the toxic campus culture or overly demanding professors. They never asked the one question that mattered. What are you doing wrong? Meanwhile, I was working 2 jobs to pay for my own community college classes. I was saving every penny, trying to build a future. My parents' response? You're so responsible. We never have to worry about you. It was a compliment that felt like a dismissal. My stability was taken for granted, while his chaos demanded all their attention and resources. The first real crack in his perfect college narrative came when he lost his scholarship. He told them it was because of mental health issues and an unsupportive professor. I'm not saying he didn't struggle mentally, but I'd seen his social media. There was a lot of nightlife, and not a lot of studying. Still, my parents rushed to rescue him. They paid his tuition out of pocket. Called it an investment in his future. He took a semester off. Then another. Then suddenly, he just wasn't in school anymore. Every time relatives asked, my parents had a new story. He's taking time to find himself. He's exploring opportunities. He's too smart for a traditional path. Translation. He was sleeping in, gaming all night, and telling anyone who'd listen that the system was rigged against him. While he found himself, I was working, paying my own bills, and feeling guilty for resenting him. He'd come home for holidays, full of grand plans and vague promises. He'd talk about starting a business, making millions, and how he'd pay them back tenfold. My parents would beam. See? We knew he'd figure it out. And then he'd ask for money. For a startup cost. For seed funding. For living expenses until the big deal closes. And they always gave it to him. They paid his rent when he didn't. They covered credit card debt he'd racked up by accident. They even dipped into the fund they'd said was for their retirement. I remember overhearing a conversation one night. I was home for a quick visit, and the kitchen light was on late. My mom's voice was low, strained. We can't keep doing this, she said. We're behind on our own payments. My dad's voice was tired. He just needs one more chance, he replied. He's our son. We have 2 kids, she said, her voice cracking. And the other one is out there handling life without help. That was the first time I heard my mother admit out loud that the golden child was made of glass. It was the first time I heard her acknowledge that I existed, not just as the responsible one, but as someone who was actually doing something. But even then, the pattern held. They found more money. They gave him another chance. They kept him afloat. He was like a leaky boat, and they were constantly bailing water, even as their own ship started to sink. I watched them sacrifice their peace, their savings, their future, all to keep his illusion of success alive. And he just expected it. He never questioned it. He never seemed to realize the true cost of his endless second chances. He was still the golden child, but the gold was starting to tarnish. And the price of keeping it shiny was bankrupting us all. That was the first time I heard my parents say the word no, in the same sentence as my brother's name. But it wasn't a no to him. It was a no to their own financial security, a no to their own peace of mind. And it was a yes to one more chance for him to prove he was worth it. The golden child was still afloat, but the water was rising fast. And my parents, the tireless crew, were starting to drown. The real crash started the day my parents finally said a word he'd never truly heard from them before. No. It wasn't a gentle suggestion. It wasn't a, not right now. It was a hard, definitive, terrifying no. He wanted money. Again. Another opportunity. Another business idea. Another, I swear this will pay off for all of us. He'd called them, full of his usual bluster, demanding a significant sum for a final investment that would supposedly make all their sacrifices worth it. My parents had already drained their retirement savings. They'd taken out loans. They'd refinanced the house. They were financially exhausted, scared, and, for the first time, truly empty. I was at their house that day, helping my mom with some yard work. The phone rang. My dad answered, and I watched his face go from tired to grim. He listened for a long time, his jaw clenching tighter and tighter. My mom stood beside him, wringing her hands, her eyes fixed on his face, desperate for a sign. Finally, he spoke. No, he said. Just that one word. Clear, firm, unwavering. My mom gasped. I froze. It was like hearing a foreign language in our own home. He listened for a moment longer, then his voice hardened. We don't have it, he said. We can't. We literally have nothing left to give you. He hung up the phone. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. My mom rushed to him. What did he say? What happened? My dad just shook his head, looking older than I'd ever seen him. He said we're abandoning him, he muttered. He said we never loved him. He said he's done with us. My mom started to cry. But he needs us. He's our son. My dad finally looked at her, and his eyes were full of a pain I recognized. It was the pain of a person who had given everything, and it still wasn't enough. He's 30 years old, Mary, he said, his voice breaking. He's not a child anymore. We've given him everything. We've risked everything. And he just keeps taking. He turned to me. And for the first time, he actually saw me. You, he said. You never asked for anything. You just did it. You worked. You saved. You built your own life. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a compliment, really. It was just a statement of fact, delivered with a heavy sigh. But it was the first time I'd ever heard him acknowledge the difference. The phone rang again. My mom jumped, but my dad just stared at it. It was my brother. He left a voicemail. My mom played it on speaker. His voice was laced with fury and entitlement. "So this is it, huh?" he snarled. "You're just going to turn your back on me? After everything I've done for this family? After all the promises? You're choosing to let me fail?" He accused them of betrayal, of bad parenting, of loving me more now that I was successful. He said they'd ruined his life by babying him, and now they were abandoning him when he needed them the most. My mom started to protest, but my dad held up a hand. "He's right," my dad said, his voice hollow. "We did baby him. We did ruin him. But we're not doing it anymore." That was the moment the golden child's shield shattered. He didn't realize it, but his endless second chances had just run out. The well was dry. The safety net was gone. He called again, demanding to know what they were going to do. My dad picked up. "You can come home," he said, his voice firm. "But there will be rules. You will pay rent. You will get a job. We are not your backup plan anymore." Silence on the other end. Then a click. He'd hung up. My mom started to cry again. "He's going to be out on the street. What will he do?" My dad just sat down, head in his hands. "He'll figure it out," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Like everyone else. That was the day the golden child finally started to lose everything. The endless second chances. The automatic sympathy. The belief that the world owed him a softer landing than everyone else. He lost his apartment. His car was repossessed. His business partners disappeared. The debts piled up. He called my parents from a borrowed phone, voice shaking, asking if he could move back home. For the first time in our lives, they didn't say yes right away. My dad told him, "You can come home. But there will be rules. You will pay rent. You will get a job. We are not your backup plan anymore." Silence. Then, a quiet, broken, "Okay." The golden child didn't lose everything. The day his life fell apart. He lost everything. The day he realized the people who always caught him had finally moved their hands. The golden child didn't lose everything the day his life fell apart. He lost everything the day he realized the people who always caught him had finally moved their hands. He moved back home. Not with a triumphant return, but with a quiet, defeated shuffle. The house, once his kingdom, was now a place of strict rules and uncomfortable silences. My parents, once his unwavering protectors, were now different, wary, tired, and, for the first time, united in their resolve. He got a job, a minimum wage job. He paid rent. He did chores. He was, for the first time in his life, living like a regular adult. And he hated it. He complained constantly. About his boss. About his coworkers. About the unfairness of it all. He still believed the world owed him more. But now when he complained, my parents didn't rush to his defense. They just listened, nodded, and sometimes, my dad would say, "That's life, son. You gotta deal with it." It was a small shift, but it was monumental. The golden child was finally being treated like everyone else. And me? The less important kid? The one who never needed as much? I didn't get an apology. I didn't get some big speech about how wrong they'd been. There was no dramatic family meeting where they confessed their favoritism. But I did get something else. Respect. Boundaries. And the freedom to finally stop competing with a version of him that never truly existed. My mom started calling me more often. Not to complain about my brother, but to talk about my life. She'd ask for my advice. She'd listen to my stories. She'd even brag about my accomplishments to relatives, something she rarely did before. My dad, too, changed. He'd call just to chat. He'd ask about my work, my hobbies. He even came to visit me once, just to see my apartment, and he looked around with a quiet pride I'd never seen directed at me before. One day, my brother and I were alone in the kitchen. He was washing dishes, something he'd never done voluntarily in his life. He sighed. "This sucks," he muttered. "I don't know how you did it all these years." I looked at him. He wasn't angry. He just looked tired and a little lost. "You just do it," I said. "Because you have to." He nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "I guess so." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a moment of profound understanding. But it was the closest we'd ever come to an honest conversation. The golden child didn't become a perfect person overnight. He still struggled. He still had moments of entitlement. But the safety net was gone, and he was learning, slowly, how to walk without it. The real crash wasn't just about him losing his money or his apartment. It was about him losing the illusion. The illusion that he was special. The illusion that consequences didn't apply to him. The illusion that someone would always be there to clean up his mess. And for my parents, the crash was about losing their own illusion. The illusion that they could protect him from the world forever. The illusion that their love was best expressed through endless rescue. They had spent years building a golden cage for him, and in the end, it trapped them all. So when did my parents' golden child finally crash and lose everything? It wasn't a single day. It was a slow, painful unraveling of every lie, every excuse, every unearned privilege. It was the moment the people who always caught him finally moved their hands. And in that moment, he didn't just lose his possessions. He lost the shield of double standards. He lost the guaranteed sympathy. He lost the fantasy that he was better than everyone else. And in losing all of that, he finally had a chance to find something real. As for me, the less important kid, the one who never needed as much, I didn't get an apology. I didn't get some big speech about how wrong they'd been. But I did get something else. Respect. Boundaries. And the freedom to finally stop competing with a version of him that never truly existed. And maybe, just maybe, the family finally had a chance to heal.